least two regards. One, with respect to its obligation to keeping the Panama Canal neutral and the major concessions to China, the control that China has over ports on both ends, and the bridge across the canal, which has the potential to shut down transit. We also heard testimony about the degree of revenue that Panama is taking, and that's potentially in violation of the obligation that tolls and other charges shall be just, reasonable, equitable, and consistent with principles of international law. I want to ask you, Professor, assume that the United States makes the determination that Panama is in violation of this treaty. I asked about what the remedies were, and you mentioned at the time military force. So military force is always one potential remedy. What other potential remedies are there? And in particular, could a consequence of being in breach of the treaty be a determination that the treaty is null and void, that the concession of control of the Panama Canal to Panama is no longer in force, and could that, under international law, result in the United States returning to operating the Panama Canal? What's your judgment?
Yeah, I think treaties like this demonstrate that countries really need to think long and hard before they give away strategic assets, because the United States is free to cancel this treaty or at any time withdraw from the treaty, as it were. But given that the United States has transferred control and sovereignty of the canal zone to Panama, the cancellation of the treaty would not necessarily reverse that concession. Concessions that have to do with sovereign control are not particularly reversible. For example, Israel made a deal with Lebanon to give maritime territory to Lebanon in exchange for peace just 2 years ago, did not get peace. It's not clear that it can simply cancel and get that territory back. Now, it is the case that America can take all sorts of measures to insist on neutrality. And if neutrality means putting American firms in operation, or otherwise taking other steps, that is something that can be done. But a kind of territorial control is not a clear remedy unless it is something that just accompanies the steps needed to restore the regime of neutrality.
All right, well, I want to thank all the witnesses for their important testimony here today. Senators will have until the close of business on Tuesday, February 4th to submit questions for the record. The witnesses will have until the end of the day on Tuesday, February 18th to respond to those questions. And this concludes today's hearing. The committee stands adjourned. And America's triumphant completion of that canal, the major infrastructure projects across Panama cost more than 35,000 lives. For the final decade of work on the Panama Canal, the United States spent nearly $400 million, equivalent to more than $15 billion today. The Panama Canal proved a truly invaluable asset, sparing both cargo ships and warships the long journey around South America. When President Carter gave it away to Panama, Americans were puzzled, confused, and many outraged. With the passage of time, many have lost sight of the canal's importance, both to national security and to the U.S. economy. Not President Trump. When he demanded fair treatment for American ships and goods, many in the media scoffed. But the Panama Canal was not just given away. President Carter struck a bargain. He made a treaty. And President Trump is making a serious and substantive argument that that treaty is being violated right now. This committee has jurisdiction under the Senate rules over the Panama Canal, and today we will examine evidence of potential violations. President Trump has highlighted two key issues. Number one, the danger of China exploiting or blocking passage through the canal. And number two, the exorbitant costs for transit. Chinese companies are right now building a bridge across the canal at a slow pace so as to take nearly a decade. And Chinese companies control container ports at either end. The partially completed bridge gives China the ability to block the canal without warning. And the ports give China ready observation posts to time that action. This situation, I believe, poses acute risks to U.S. national security. Meanwhile, the high fees